If everything feels urgent, it does not mean that your life is chaotic. It does not mean you are failing to cope. It does not mean you are incapable of rest. It means that urgency has taken on a role it was never meant to play. Most people believe urgency is created by circumstances, deadlines, messages, responsibilities, expectations, the speed of modern life. But urgency does not begin with events, it begins with interpretation. That is why two people can live very similar lives, face similar demands, and yet experience completely different inner realities. One may feel busy but stable. The other feels permanently tense, as if something important is about to go wrong at any moment. The difference is not personality, it is not discipline, it is not mindset, it is how pressure is translated internally. For many people, pressure is no longer neutral information. It is no longer just a signal that something needs attention. Pressure has become a warning that says, stay alert, do not slow down, do not relax. This is why rest often feels wrong, why slowing down creates discomfort instead of relief, why pauses feel heavy, even undeserved. Not because something is actually urgent, but because urgency has become constant. Originally, urgency had a very clear function. It appeared in moments that required immediate response. Moments where delay had real consequences, moments where attention truly mattered. And once those moments passed, urgency faded. The body returned to baseline, the system stood down. But for many people, that return never happens anymore. Pressure stopped switching off. The internal system learned that staying activated felt safer than trusting the moment. Safer than assuming neutrality, safer than letting go. So urgency began to spread. It attached itself to situations that were never dangerous. Unread emails, unfinished tasks, open tabs, thoughts that did not require action. At some point, urgency stopped meaning this needs to be handled now. It started meaning stay ready, and when readiness becomes permanent, everything starts to feel important. Not meaningful, important in the sense that it demands attention. Even small decisions feel loaded, even simple tasks feel heavy. Even free time feels tense. Because urgency is no longer about time, it is about safety. When pressure is interpreted as danger, the protective system never fully disengages. There is no internal signal that says, this moment is neutral, so every moment feels charged. This is why people feel exhausted without being physically tired. They are not doing too much. They are staying alert for too long. Living in a constant state of readiness creates a background tension that never fully resolves. There is always something pending, something unfinished, something that could escalate. Even when nothing actually does, the sense of pressure remains. Over time, urgency becomes self-sustaining. The feeling itself turns into evidence. If I feel this tense, there must be something wrong. So, attention tightens, the body stays activated. Rest is postponed automatically, not as a conscious choice, but as a learned pattern. This creates a quiet contradiction. Life may be objectively stable, nothing dramatic is happening, nothing is collapsing, and yet internally there is pressure. Not panic, not fear, just a constant sense of, I cannot fully drop this. This is where urgency begins to shape identity. Being alert feels normal, being tense feels familiar, being calm feels unfamiliar, even unsafe, because calm offers no task, no direction, no justification. So the system fills the space, with planning, with anticipation, with mental noise, not to sabotage you, but to maintain readiness. This is why urgency often increases during moments that should feel safe. Evenings, weekends, vacations, when external demands decrease, internal pressure becomes more visible. And because that sensation feels uncomfortable, it is interpreted as a problem. Something must be wrong. So urgency intensifies again. In this way, urgency feeds itself. The issue is not that urgency exists. Urgency is useful when it appears in the right context. The issue is that urgency has lost its boundaries. It no longer distinguishes between actual demand and internal pressure, between threat and discomfort, between importance and intensity. This confusion keeps the system locked. Understanding begins when this confusion is recognized, because urgency is not a fact. It is a sensation, and sensations are not commands. They are signals, and signals can be misread. For many people, urgency developed during periods when pressure truly mattered. Times when staying alert prevented consequences. Times when slowing down was genuinely unsafe. times when readiness protected something important. The system adapted correctly, but it never updated. The environment changed, the expectations changed, the internal response did not, so urgency stayed active, long after it stopped being necessary. This is why telling yourself to relax does not work. The response is not logical. It is conditioned. The pattern says, when pressure appears, stay engaged. Trying to override this with force only strengthens urgency, because force itself feels urgent. Understanding works differently. Understanding reframes the signal. Urgency does not mean this must be done now. It means something inside feels overloaded. That distinction matters. When urgency is treated as a command, the system escalates. When urgency is recognized as information, the system begins to recalibrate, not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually. This is why simply understanding why everything feels urgent often brings a subtle sense of relief. Nothing changes externally, but internally, the pressure is no longer automatically obeyed. The sensation is noticed without being followed. That creates space. Space between feeling and reaction. Space between pressure and action. In that space, the system can begin to settle. Urgency still appears, but it no longer dominates every moment. Tasks lose their threatening edge. Pauses stop feeling dangerous. Silence stops demanding explanation. Life does not become passive. It becomes less reactive. There is room again. Room to exist without constant justification. Room to pause without consequence. Room to respond instead of react. This is what people often describe as calm, but calm is not something you force. It is what remains when urgency no longer hijacks attention. When pressure is allowed to exist without being interpreted as danger. When intensity is no longer mistaken for importance. There is another reason urgency holds so much power. Urgency simplifies the world. When everything feels urgent, there is no ambiguity, no uncertainty, no space to hesitate. Urgency creates a clear inner order. Act, react, move, manage. And for a system that has learned to associate uncertainty with risk, that clarity feels stabilizing, even if it is exhausting. This is why urgency can feel strangely familiar, even comforting in a harsh way. It keeps attention focused. It reduces emotional complexity. It replaces open questions with pressure. Without urgency, there is space, and space brings choice. Choice brings uncertainty, and uncertainty for a system trained on vigilance feels more threatening than pressure itself. So urgency becomes a way to avoid not danger, but openness. This is also why letting go of urgency can initially feel like losing structure. When the pressure eases, there may be a brief sense of disorientation, not because something is wrong, but because the internal rules have changed. For a long time, urgency dictated meaning, what mattered, what deserved attention, what could wait. When that authority weakens, the system has to relearn how to exist without constant pressure. This transition is rarely dramatic. It is quiet, subtle, often barely noticeable, but it is real. And over time, as urgency loses its role as organizer, experience becomes less compressed. Moments stretch again, attention softens, time feels less hostile. Not because life slows down, but because it is no longer experienced as a continuous emergency. And that shift, from emergency to presence, is where urgency finally releases what it was holding together.